Hello, my kiddos. You guys notice? Got a bunch more artwork from you. Look. See that? I got a rabbit from Jeremiah and a bunch of other pictures from Hannah. And a heart. Alright. So last time we met Treebeard, who is an Ent, which is basically like a tree that walks. So let's get back to the story. Holding the hobbits gently but firmly, one in the crook of each arm, Treebeard lifted up first one large foot and then the other, and moved them to the edge of the shelf. The root-like toes grasped the rocks. Then carefully and solemnly he started down from step to step and reached the floor of the forest. At once he set off with long, deliberate strides through the trees, deeper and deeper into the wood, never far from the stream, climbing steadily up towards the slopes of the mountain. Many of the trees seemed asleep, or as unaware of him as of any other creature that merely passed by. But some quivered, and some raised up their branches above his head as he approached. All the while, as he walked, he talked to himself in a long running stream of musical sounds. The hobbits were silent for some time. They felt, oddly enough, safe and comfortable, and they had a great deal to think and wonder about. At last Pippin ventured to speak again. "Please, Treebeard," he said, "could I ask you something? Why did Celeborn warn us against your forest? He told us not to risk getting entangled in it." Did he now?" rumbled Treebeard. "And I might have said much the same, if you had been going the other way. Do not risk getting entangled in the woods of Laurelindorinan. That is what the elves used to call it, but now they make the name shorter. Lothlorien, they call it. Perhaps they are right. Maybe it is fading, not growing. Land of the Valley of Singing Gold, that was it, once upon a time. Now it is the Dream Flower. Ah, well, but it is a queer place, and not for just anyone to venture in. I am surprised that you ever got out, but much more surprised that you ever got in. That has not happened to strangers for many a year. It is a queer land. And so is this. Folk have come to grief here. Aye, they have, to grief. Laurelindorinan, Linda Lorendor, Mali Nornelion, or Nemalin, he hummed to himself. They are falling rather behind the world in there, I guess, he said. Neither this country nor anything else outside the Golden Wood is what it was when Celeborn was young. Still, Taurelilomina, Tumbalemorna, Taura, Lomianor. That is what they used to say. Things have changed, but it is still true in places. What do you mean? Said Pippin. What is true? The trees and the Ents, said Treebeard. I do not understand all that goes on myself, so I cannot explain it to you. Some of us are still true Ents, and lively enough in our fashion, but many are growing sleepy, going tree-ish, as you might say. Most of the trees are just trees, of course, but many are half awake. Some are quite wide awake, and a few are, getting Entish. That is going on all the time. When that happens to a tree, you find that some have bad hearts. Nothing to do with their wood. I do not mean that. Why, I knew some good old willows down the Entwash, gone long ago, alas. They were quite hollow. Indeed, they were falling all to pieces. but as quiet and sweet-spoken as a young leaf. And then there are some trees in the valleys under the mountains, sound as a bell, and bad right through. That sort of thing seems to spread. There used to be some very dangerous parts in this country. There are still some very black patches. Like the old forest away to the north, you mean? Asked Mary. Aye, aye, something like, but much worse. I do not doubt there is some shadow of the great darkness lying there still away north, and bad memories are handed down. But there are hollow dales in this land where the darkness has never been lifted, and the trees are older than I am. Still, we do what we can. We keep off strangers and the foolhardy, and we train and we teach, we walk and we weed. We are tree herds, we old Ents. Few enough of us are left now. Sheep get like shepherd, and shepherds like sheep, it is said. But slowly, and neither have long in the world. It is quicker and closer with trees and Ents, and they walk down the ages together, for Ents are more like elves, less interested in themselves than men, and better at getting inside other things. And yet again, Ents are more like men, more changeable than elves are, and quicker at taking the color of the outside, you might say, or better than both, for they are steadier and keep their minds on things longer. Some of my kin look just like trees now, and need something great to rouse them, and they speak only in whispers. But some of my trees are limb-lithe, and many can talk to me. Elves began it, of course, waking trees up and teaching them to speak and learning their tree talk. They always wished to talk to everything, the old elves did. But then the great darkness came, and they passed away over the sea or fled into far valleys and hid themselves, and made songs about days that would never come again. Never again. Aye, aye, there was all one wood once upon a time from here to the mountains of Lune, and this was just the east end. Those were the broad days. Time was when I could walk and sing all day and hear no more than the echo of my own voice in the hollow hills. The woods were like the woods of Lothlorien, only thicker, stronger, younger. And the smell of the air, I used to spend a week just breathing. Treebeard fell silent, striding along and yet making hardly a sound with his great feet. Then he began to hum again, and passed into a murmuring chant. Gradually the hobbits became aware that he was chanting to them. In the willow meads of Tassarinan, I walked in the spring. Ah, the sight and the smell of the spring in Nan Tassarion. And I said that was good. I wandered in summer in the elms of woods of Osiriand. Ah, the light and the music of the summer by the 7 rivers of Osir. And I thought that was best. To the beaches of Neldoreth I came in the autumn. Ah, the gold and the red and the singing of leaves in the autumn in Tower na Neldor. It was more than my desire. To the pine trees upon the highland of Dorthonion I climbed in the winter. Ah, the wind and the whiteness of the black branches of winter upon the Orod Nathon. My voice went up and sang in the sky, and now all those lands lie under the wave, and I walk in Ambarona, in Taurimorna, in Aldaome, in my own land, in the country of Fangorn, where the roots are long and the years lie thicker than the leaves, in Taurimor Nalome. He ended and strode on silently, and in all the wood, as far as ear could reach, there was not a sound. The day waned, and dusk was twined about the boles of the trees. At last the hobbits saw, rising dimly before them, a steep dark land. They had come to the feet of the mountains, and to the green roots of tall methadras. Down the hillside, the young Entwash, leaping from its spring high above, ran noisily from step to meet them. On the right of the stream there was a long slope clad with grass, now gray in the twilight. No trees grew there, and it was open to the sky. Stars were shining already in lakes between shores of cloud. Treebeard strode up the slope, hardly slackening his pace. Suddenly before them the hobbit saw a wide opening. Two great trees stood there, one on either side. Like living gateposts. But there was no gate save their crossing and interwoven boughs. As the old Ent approached, the trees lifted up their branches, and all their leaves quivered and rustled, for they were evergreen trees, and their leaves were dark and polished, and gleamed in the twilight. Beyond them was a wide level space, as though the floor of a great hall had been cut in the side of the hill. On either hand the walls sloped upward, until they were 50 feet high or more, and along each wall stood an aisle of trees that also increased in height as they marched inwards. At the far end the rock wall was sheer, but at the bottom it had been hollowed back into a shallow bay with an arched roof. The only roof of the hall, save the branches of the trees, which at the inner end overshadowed all the ground, leaving only a broad open path in the middle. A little stream escaped from the springs above, and leaving the main water, fell trickling down the sheer face of the wall, pouring in silver drops, like a fine curtain in front of the arched bay. The water was gathered again into a stone basin in the floor between the trees, and thence it spilled and flowed away beside the open path, out to join the Entwash in its journey through the forest. Here we are, said Treebeard, breaking his long silence. I have brought you about 70,000 Ent strides, but what that comes to in measurement of your land I do not know. Anyhow, we are near the roots of the last mountain. Part of the name of this place might be Wellinghall, if it were turned into your language. I like it. We will stay here tonight. He set them down in the grass between the aisles of the trees, and they followed him towards the great arch. Just a second, kiddos. Okay, I'm back. Let's see, where was I? The hobbits now noticed that as he walked, his knees hardly bent, but his legs opened in a great stride. He planted his big toes, and they were indeed big and very broad, on the ground first, before any other part of his feet. For a moment, Treebeard stood under the rain of the falling spring, and took a deep breath. Then he laughed, and passed inside. A great stone table stood there, but no chairs. At the back of the bay, it was already quite dark. Treebeard lifted two great vessels and stood them on the table. They seemed to be filled with water, but he held his hands over them, and immediately they began to glow, one with a golden and the other with a rich green light, and the blending of the two lights lit the bay, as if the sun of summer was shining through a roof of young leaves. Looking back, the hobbits saw that the trees in the court had also begun to glow, faintly at first, but steadily quickening, until every leaf was edged with light, some green, some gold, some red as copper, while the tree trunks looked like pillars molded out of luminous stone. Well, well, now we can talk again, said Treebeard. You are thirsty, I expect. Perhaps you are also tired. Drink this. He went to the back of the bay, and then they saw that several tall stone jars stood there, with heavy lids. He removed one of the lids and dipped in a great ladle, and with it filled 3 bowls, one very large bowl and 2 smaller ones. This is an Ent house, he said, and there are no seats, I fear, but you may sit on the table. Picking up the hobbits, he set them on the great stone slab, 6 feet above the ground, and there they sat, dangling their legs and drinking in sips. The drink was like water, indeed very like the taste of the draughts they had drunk from the Entwash near the borders of the forest, and yet there was some scent or savor in it which they could not describe. It was faint, but it reminded them of the smell of a distant wood borne from afar by a cool breeze at night. The effect of the draught began at the toes and rose steadily through every limb, bringing refreshment and vigor as it coursed upwards right to the tips of their hair. Indeed, the hobbits felt that the hair on their heads was actually standing up, waving and curling and growing. As for Treebeard, he first laved his feet in the basin beyond the arch, and then he drained his bowl at one draught, one long, slow draught. The hobbits thought he would never stop. At last he set the bowl down again. Ah, he sighed. Now we can talk easier. You can sit on the floor, and I will lie down. That will prevent this drink from rising to my head and sending me to sleep. On the right side of the bay there was a great bed on low legs, not more than a couple feet high, covered deep in dried grass and bracken. Treebeard lowered himself slowly onto this, with only the slightest sign of bending at the middle, until he lay at full length, with his arms behind his head, looking up at the ceiling, upon which lights were flickering, like the play of leaves in the sunshine. Merry and Pippin sat beside him on pillows of grass. "Now tell me your tale, and do not hurry," said Treebeard. The hobbits began to tell him the story of their adventures ever since they left Hobbiton. They followed no very clear order, for they interrupted one another continually, and Treebeard often stopped the speaker and went back to some earlier point, or jumped forward asking questions about later events. They said nothing whatever of the ring, and did not tell him why they set out or where they were going, and he did not ask for any reasons. He was immensely interested in everything, in the Black Riders, in Elrond, and Rivendell, in the Old Forest, and Tom Bombadil, in the mines of Moria, and in Lothlorien, and Galadriel. He made them describe the Shire and its country over and over again. He said an odd thing at this point. "You never see any Ents round there, do you?" he asked. "Well, not Ents, Entwives, I should really say." "Entwives?" said Pippin. "Are they like you at all?" "Yes, well, no. I do not really know now," said Treebeard thoughtfully. "But they would like your country. I just wondered." Treebeard was, however, especially interested in everything that concerned Gandalf, and most interested of all in Saruman's doings. The hobbits regretted very much that they knew so little about them, only a rather vague report by Sam of what Gandalf had told the council. But they were clear at any rate that Ugluk and his troop came from Isengard, and spoke of Saruman as their master. Said Treebeard, when at last their story had wound and wandered down to the battle of the orcs and the riders of Rohan. Well, that is a bundle of news, no mistake. You have not told me all, no indeed, not by a long way, but I do not doubt that you are doing as Gandalf would wish. There is something very big going on that I can see, and what it is maybe I shall learn in good time, or in bad time. By root and twig, but it is a strange business. Up sprout a little folk that are not in the old lists, and behold, the 9 forgotten riders reappear to hunt them, and Gandalf takes them on a great journey, and Galadriel harbors them in Caras Galadon, and orcs pursue them down all the leagues of Wilderland. Indeed, they seem to be caught up in a great storm. I hope they weather it." "And what about yourself?" asked Merry. I have not troubled about the great wars," said Treebeard. They mostly concern elves and men. That is the business of wizards. Wizards are always troubled about the future. I do not like worrying about the future. I am not altogether on anybody's side, because nobody is altogether on my side, if you understand me. Nobody cares for the woods as I care for them, not even elves nowadays. Still, I take more kindly to elves than to others. It was the elves that cured us of dumbness long ago, and that was a great gift that cannot be forgotten, though our ways have parted since. And there are some things, of course, whose side I am altogether not on. I am against them altogether. These Mburarum, he again made a deep rumble of disgust. These orcs and their masters. I used to be anxious when the shadow lay on Mirkwood, but when it removed to Mordor I did not trouble for a while. Mordor is a long way away, but it seems that the wind is setting east, and the withering of all woods may be drawing near. There is naught that an old Ent can do to hold back that storm. He must weather it or crack. But Saruman now, Saruman is a neighbor. I cannot overlook him. I must do something, I suppose. I have often wondered lately what I should do about Saruman. Who is Saruman? Asked Pippin. Do you know anything about his story? Saruman is a wizard, answered Treebeard. More than that I cannot say. I do not know the history of wizards. They appeared first after the great ships came over the sea, but if they came with the ships, I never can tell. Saruman was reckoned great among them, I believe. He gave up wandering about the men and minding the affairs of men and elves some time ago. You would call it a very long time ago, and he settled down at Angrenost, or Isengard as the men of Rohan call it. He was very quiet to begin with, but his fame began to grow. He was chosen to be the head of the White Council, they say. But that did not turn out too well. I wonder now if even then Saruman was not turning to evil ways. But at any rate, he used to give no trouble in his neighborhood, no trouble to his neighbors. I used to talk to him. There was a time when he was always walking about my woods. He was polite in those days, always asking my leave, at least when he met me, and always eager to listen. I told him many things that he would never have found out by himself, but he never repaid me in like kind. I cannot remember that he ever told me anything, and he got more and more like that. His face, as I remember it, I have not seen it for many a day, became like windows in a stone wall, windows with shutters inside. I think that I now understand what he is up to. He is plotting to become a power. He has a mind of metal and wheels, and he does not care for growing things, except as far as they serve him for the moment. And now it is clear that he is a black traitor. He has taken up with foul folk, with the orcs. Boom. Worse than that, he has been doing something to them, something dangerous, for these Isengarders are more like wicked men. It is a mark of evil things that came in the great darkness that they cannot abide the sun, but Saruman's orcs can endure it, even if they hate it. I wonder what he has done. Are they men he has ruined, or has he blended the races of orcs and men? That would be a black evil. Treebeard rumbled for a moment, as if he were pronouncing some deep subterranean Entish malediction. Some time ago I began to wonder how orcs dared to pass through my woods so freely, he went on. Only lately did I guess that Saruman was to blame, and that long ago he had been spying out all the ways and discovering my secrets. He and his foul folk are making havoc now. Down on the borders they are felling trees, good trees. Some of the trees they just cut down and leave to rot. Orc mischief, that. But most are hewn up and carried off to feed the fires of Orthanc. There is always a smoke rising from Isengard these days. Curse him, root and branch. Many of those trees were my friends, creatures I had known from nut and acorn. Many had voices of their own that are lost forever now, and there are wastes of stump and bramble where once there were singing groves. I have been idle. I have let things slip. It must stop. Treebeard raised himself from his bed with a jerk, stood up, and thumped his hand on the table. The vessels of light trembled and sent up 2 jets of flame. There was a flicker of green fire in his eyes, and his beard stood out stiff as a great besom. I will stop it, he boomed, and you shall come with me. You may be able to help me. You will be helping your own friends that way too, for if Saruman is not checked, Rohan and Gondor will have an enemy behind them as well as in front. Our roads go together, to Isengard. We will come with you, said Merry. We will do what we can. Yes, said Pippin. I should like to see the White Hand overthrown. I should like to be there, even if I could not be of much use. I shall never forget Ugluk and the crossing of Rohan. Good, good, said Treebeard, but I spoke hastily. We must not be hasty. I have become too hot. I must cool myself and think, for it is easier to shout stop than to do it. He strode to the archway and stood for some time under the falling rain of the spring. Then he laughed and shook himself, and whether the drops of water fell glittering from him to the ground, and wherever the drops of water fell glittering from him to the ground, they glinted like red and green sparks. He came back and laid himself in the bed again, and was silent. I went overtime. Love you always and forever, no matter what.